I always advise creators to, as long as you're in the creator middle class, as long as you've not crossed the 250K mark or the 500K mark, where money actually starts flooding in and you can quit doing everything else and just make content on whim. So that telling other people the answer I found is a really exciting process for me, and it really gives me kind of satisfaction, or you could say it really makes me happy to kind of let other people know, okay, oh, this is how it actually was, and this is how things actually were.
Welcome to In Sync, a podcast about the lives we all want to really live and figuring out how to get there. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to In Sync. Today's episode takes a slightly different approach to what we usually associate with terms like well being or intentional living, because today we'll be talking about history with none other than Hamza Iqbal, who you all probably better know as Tarikh Wala. Hamza is a creator economy strategist and strategy lead at Shark Talent, Pakistan's biggest influencer marketing agency, but his passion project is his content creation in the form of Tarikh Wala, a multi-platform initiative that explores heritage sites across Lahore and allows people an insight into what history really means for our everyday lives. Hamza, as a history nerd myself, I'm so excited to have you here today and talk about this and allow our listeners to really understand how history, well-being, and intentional living can all connect.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Very concise, very to the point, and covered everything. I'm definitely going to copy this one for any other person who kind of reaches out to me and asks me for my introduction. But yes, very excited for this conversation. And last night I also heard your podcast with Instagram. Really intrigued me. Really, the kind of topics you discussed are not usually the kind of topics that are discussed on Pakistani podcasts, at least. So I'm really excited for this experience, and let's start.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that, we can continue this, what you said about not being discussed too much on Pakistani podcasts, because I'm really trying that as Pakistanis, we can sort of have a different take on life and really understand that there's more to do than just doctor or engineer, or even if you're working like yourself, there's other avenues to explore, like your passions, like things that you believe in. And on that note, something that I would really love to know, and I ask all my guests this, is what really gets you out of bed in the morning?
My alarm clock and like 3 snooze buttons is what gets me out of bed, because I'm really not a morning person. But jokes aside, so like I would say like around 6 to 9 months ago, I was in a very prestigious place, organization wise, and I was in a really prestigious position as well. Like I had what everyone in my kind of batch wanted to have, and but I didn't wake up feeling happy or feeling good, and it was a struggle to get out of bed every morning, and like I was just not content with life. And even though from the outside I had everything that anyone could have wanted to have, so having had that struggle phase with not being happy with what I was doing, I kind of took a leap and changed careers into something that I wasn't really educated on, or I didn't have a degree in, and I didn't have any experience in, and that really changed things up for me. So what gets me out of bed is doing something I love doing, looking forward to the day and thinking, and kind of like you love what you're doing when at night you can't go to sleep because you have so many ideas that you want to try out at work the next morning, that you can't really you're too excited to go to sleep. So that is the kind of place where I am right now, and I'm really, really grateful for it. So having seen that phase where I couldn't get out of bed, to now being in that phase where I have a very big reason to get out of bed apart from my alarm clocks, is essentially what gets me out of bed.
So fun fact, I think you will be our 7th episode, inshallah. And out of that, I think almost everyone we have interviewed has said the same thing to this question, where they are not morning people. So I don't know whether creative people are just evening people in general, or we're attracting that that kind of a vibe. But this seems to be the general trend that we're seeing with our guests, which I thought was really funny. But other than that, I think what you said really resonated with me, where you need a reason to be thinking about what you're doing and planning it and being excited about the next day because you can do more stuff. But that can also, I'm sure, get exhausting because then your brain is always on the go. So how do you do you ever struggle with figuring out what works versus doing what you wanted to do? 'Cause especially in the age of social media, you're managing influencers as well, you're running your own platform. There's a certain way social media algorithms work. You struggle with figuring out what works versus just doing what you wanted to do.
So there was a phase in between where I kind of confused, where I kind of let both of the worlds overlap. And what I mean by that is I have a professional commitment, I have a professional job where the primary objective is making money. And then I have my social media platform where the primary objective is just doing what I love to do. And for a brief moment in time, for like a month, I let them overlap. Like I made that decision to let them overlap because I was like, "Okay, I'm having more fun doing content creation and I should make a job out of this. So I should make money out of this." And so the reason why I'm saying this is that I put that expectation of seeing what people wanted and seeing what algorithms wanted on my passion project, my content creation, when in fact in the past it had only been in my job where I kind of help influencers and brands up their social media game. When I let that overlap and I placed that pressure on my passion project, it manifested itself into the fact that, oh, I wasn't having fun with my passion project anymore. Like it wasn't a passion project anymore. I started to get burnt out. Like before I let this happen, I could have worked 12 hours after coming back from work. So I've had nights where I didn't sleep. I came back from work, I sat on an edit or on a research project, and then I worked on it till morning, and then I went straight to work without any sleep. So that is the kind of drive and motivation I had before this. But when I placed this pressure on it, okay, oh, I need to get views out of this, oh, I need to get money out of this, it kind of changed the dynamics between the bifurcation I had created in my mind. Okay, oh, this is my job and this is my passion project. And it really kind of hurt me. So my kind of advice to most content creators who are beginning, not mature content creators who have kind of crossed the 500k mark or at least the 250k mark, would be that below 250k we like to say that this is the creator middle class. Since I work in the industry, I have a lot of insights into how content creation actually works from behind the scenes, the finances, the ops, and everything, the infra. So we like to call this the creator middle class, where you're not making enough money to kind of let it stand on its own and for it to become your primary source of income, but you are making enough money for it to be your secondary source of income. So I always advise creators to, as long as you're in the creator middle class, as long as you've not crossed the 250k mark or the 500k mark, where money actually starts flooding in and you can quit doing everything else and just make content on whim, you should not place that kind of pressure on your content creation and kind of make it your primary source of income, because it loses the passion factor of it. And as soon as the passion factor is gone, you cannot create content creation in the beginning is a very passion driven project, because the views are going to vary, the likes are going to vary, you're going to have very bad days, you're going to have very good days, and you need the passion to get you through the very bad days. So essentially, to sum my answer up, yes, I am often conflicted between what the audience wants and what will get views and what the algorithms want and what I want to do. Obviously I'm conflicted, but I kind of remove that pressure by not placing that kind of expectation on my content creation. Oh, I need to get views out of this, I need to make money out of this. Of course the views part really gives you a dopamine hit and everything. When you hit 1 million organic, it's a very different kind of a dopamine hit and you're always chasing that. But if you don't have that kind of pressure on it, or you don't put that kind of expectation on your content creation, okay, oh, if I don't hit a million, I'm worthless. I cannot put food on the table, I cannot pay my bills. So that kind of essentially decreases the pressure somewhat, that you can still live your life without kind of bowing down to the algorithms and to the audiences and to their needs and wants.
Yeah, I think that's some really great advice, especially, in a day and age where we're seeing a lot of people struggle with mental health issues that are social media triggered or social media related. And so I think the next thing that I would really love to talk about with you, especially because, you sort of have a front seat and a back seat, so to speak, at the same time within this industry, is how do you balance the pressures to keep that passion alive? If it's a side job, then keep your job going as well, and then also focus on your well-being and make sure that you as a person are getting what you need and you're doing okay.
I'll be very honest with you, like, I'm the worst person to ask this from right now because I'm really struggling with this. I haven't found the answer because right now I'm essentially working two full-time jobs. So forget exercise and forget like taking care of myself and taking days off. I don't think I've taken a weekend off in the last, I think, 3 to 4 months. I think I've worked every weekend. Like I haven't had a day off of like a proper day off in the last 3 to 4 months. And that is the cost you have to pay to kind of have hyper growth or to grow really fast, because I cannot afford to work solely on my content creation because I have to manage my finances. I don't want to depend on my parents for money for a year or two while my content creation takes off. So this is the kind of negotiated deal I have done with myself. Oh, for these 1 or 2 years I'm going to keep my head down. I'm going to kind of let some things go on the well-being part. I know it's not great advice, but this is the kind of um, compromise I've made with myself. Okay, for this 1 year, I'm really going to do two jobs. I'm going to sacrifice a lot of sleep. I might not be able to exercise every week, and I'm just going to struggle through it. And once I emerge on the other end of things, I can then quit one job, whether it be content creation or whether it be my professional thing, and then I can have a more balanced life. But I'm really sorry to disappoint, but for now, like, I'm the worst kind of person to look at for advice in this part of life.
No, but it's not disappointing at all, is it? Because it's realistic. I think it's actually unrealistic when we look at all these wellness content creators, for example, or influencers, or even someone in your life who's telling you, oh, like get 8 hours of sleep and do your gua sha and yoga in the morning and meditate. And not everyone has that luxury. Not everyone can
Yes.
always do that. So it's always nice to see a more realistic approach to, like, okay, this isn't the greatest time in my life, something is not going well, but I'm sure something is keeping you going. Are there any little things that still bring that joy in your life, or still make you feel like, okay, this is worth it,
I
or this is like
completely
5 minutes for myself?
I would say content creation is a very passion driven job. You cannot do it if you're not very, very passionate about the subject that you're addressing. So, I a content creator in the beginning might have a very viral moment, and they might take off on like one or two content pieces, and they might gain a lot of followers, but that is not a guarantee that you're always going to be viral or anything. You're going to have very good days and you're going to have very, very bad days. And on very, very bad days, you need that passion, you need that kind of spark to keep you going, because it really takes a toll on your ego. Okay, oh, maybe I'm not good enough to do this, or maybe I don't have what it takes to do it consistently, and that was just a one-off thing maybe. So any content creator you see who has been creating content on short form, let's say, who has been at it for more than a year, is going to be passion driven, hands down. This, you cannot survive in this economy without passion. So for me, I would say that is kind of, so for me, the equation is very different when you compare it to typical lifestyle influencers or creators, because they're just going around showing their lives. And for me, it's just, okay, oh, I had this question about history, and then I wanted to find the answer for myself, and then I kind of figured out, कि, oh, maybe if I have this question, other people might also have this question. So I'll just create a content piece out of the question I had and the answer I found. So that telling other people the answer I found is a really exciting process for me, and it really gives me kind of satisfaction, or you could say it really makes me happy to kind of let other people know, okay, oh, this is how it actually was, and this is how things actually work.
I'm so glad that you brought up your content, because this is actually what I was super excited to talk to you about today. And it's what pulled me towards your page as well. Like I said before, I'm a huge history nerd. And I love the way that you explore these heritage sites and the context that you give and the stories that you give. And you can really tell that, you're invested in this yourself. So, what I was really curious about is, what pulled you towards these heritage sites and towards history in the first place? It's not a very common topic of interest around us.
Yes, it's not a very common topic. So, growing up, we didn't have a TV at home, so our parents always encouraged us to read books instead of consuming mainstream media. And the only form of mainstream media that we in fact had at home was my Dada Boo's radio, which he would use to kind of listen to music and listen to the news. Otherwise, we were just encouraged to read books, and our house had a shit ton of books. So then, growing up, so when you read a lot of books, your reading speed kind of increases exponentially. So every month on the first, we would kind of get our children's books, and because our reading speeds kind of, me and my siblings' reading speeds kind of increased quite a lot, we would just finish all of the children's books in, like, I'd say a week or so, and then we were just bored, and we would just look around to find other adult books to read, which my mother had a lot of, my dad had a lot of, and my grandfather had a lot of. So I particularly gravitated towards the history books we had at house. My grandfather particularly had a lot of history books in his personal library. So growing up, I read a lot of those, and some of those were naturally related to the history of the subcontinent of South Asia and Lahore. So growing up, I had read a lot of those books, those stories, and then I'd say at around after 10th grade, I went to Government College Lahore, which is located in the heart of old Lahore. Like, that's the middle of the colonial city and the old Mughal city. So when I went to college there, it's very notorious. I know for sure that this is out there, that government college doesn't have a strict attendance policy. I don't know about now, but back then it didn't. So students were kind of empowered to make their own decision. Go, you want to take classes, take classes. If you don't want to take classes, it's up to you. At the end of the day, we're just concerned about what results you produce. So us being naturally boys growing up, we would just ditch all of the classes, and we would just roam around old Lahore exploring it. And while exploring Lahore at that point in time, my mind kind of connected a lot of sites to the books I had read growing up. So I would look at places and I would have an aha moment, oh, I've read about this place. This place had that history. And because I made a lot of those connections, I kind of developed a very deep, very meaningful connection with this city. And because I would tell those stories to my friends and they would enjoy them a lot, I naturally kind of had a feeling, oh, because my friends enjoy it a lot, I'm sure other people also want to hear these stories. So that is how I kind of started creating history content. And initially, I think back in 2015 or 16, I think, Instagram had a very pictures heavy algorithm. So I actually had an account before this on which I just pictorially kind of documented sites which were endangered or which were about to be torn down or which were in a very bad condition, and I would just pictorially kind of preserve them and take pictures of them before they vanished forever. So I have a huge backlog of pictures. I think I have 10,000 plus pictures of sites, many of which I don't think exist anymore. They were torn down, or they were just vanished, or they were encroached upon. And then that account kind of got deleted for some reason, and then Instagram also kind of changed its algorithm. So this is the new account I'm in the format of short form reels.
Oh wow, I love that you now have pictures of sites that don't exist, and I think a lot of people would be really interested in seeing that. But I'm sure that there's challenges that come with making history interesting for people, because when I tell people that I did my degree in history, their first question is why. Because for so many people, history and Pak studies is like, oh, this war happened and that war happened, and then this person came into power and this person died, and everyone's like, oh, it's all dates and names, and how do you find that interesting? So how do you make sure that you're connecting with your followers over your content?
That's a very good question, and it's something I've struggled with quite a lot. So throughout the progression of my account, I think I've published around 20 to 25 reels up until now, and after each reel you can, I think a good content strategist, I don't know about layman, but a good content strategist would be able to pinpoint ke, oh, he learned this and he changed this. So it has been a constant struggle throughout my journey to kind of learn and publish and learn and publish. And some of the key lessons, obviously some of the key challenges in the beginning were the fact that, oh, history is a very traditional, academic, dry and boring subject, and most of the material that exists on history is not is not really optimized for 90-second short form videos. It's 200, 300 pages long, at least, history books which are really digging deep into a subject, and they're really not in a storytelling narrative. Most of them are in a descriptive or an explanative or an analysis kind of a narrative. So the key kind of challenge is to then take this very dry, very academic and very lengthy discourse and kind of make it concise yet keep it very, very accurate and factual, and secondly to make it interesting by incorporating storytelling into it and kind of making it engaging, and kind of telling it in a language which is understandable by the masses at large, or which is kind of enjoyed by the masses at large. Because if I say words like bifurcation or like discourse or like complex words which historians love to use in their writings, normal people won't connect with it. So the key kind of challenge is then to kind of make everything concise and factual, yet keeping it accurate and factual, and secondly to kind of have a very engaging storytelling narrative which people understand and secondly enjoy.
Okay, as a side note, I love the word discourse. Personally, I use it all the time for no reason, even when I shouldn't. But I completely understand this need for historians and I think writers to just use like difficult words for no reason. But obviously, that doesn't work on social media. I mean, as a viewer, I think you've been doing a great job at it. There's always some interesting narratives that we don't necessarily talk about in academia. Sometimes we're not allowed to. Sometimes people just have no idea that there's alternative histories to things. But I'm sure covering that stuff also gets you mixed reviews. What's your advice to dealing with, trolling or people being like, oh, this is wrong, why are you covering this, you shouldn't be covering this, or this is not what actually happened, even when it did happen?
So first of all, though, one of the things I didn't tell you was I'm a lawyer by education. So I was trained as a lawyer, and my degree was very research intensive, and even my previous job before this as a lawyer, a lot, like lives and money, huge amounts of money are at stake, because are at stake and based on whether your research and whether your facts are straight or not. So the stakes right now are actually very low for me. The stakes before this and in my academic training and in my previous job were actually much higher than this on getting my research right. So I just try to make sure that whatever I'm saying is double checked. It's backed by primary sources, it's backed by secondary sources. And I've had one or two unfortunate moments where I relied on faulty research or weak research to tell a narrative. And like the the audiences are very smart nowadays, and they will educate you and they will tell you, "Okay, oh, you're wrong here." So when you're wrong, I would just say that the best thing to do is not to respond to every comment and to kind of justify yourself to every person, but just issue a general statement that, oh, I was wrong here, 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 and this. That is it. That is your entire job. That is on the factual side of things. But when it comes to trolling or any other thing, um, Muru gave me this great advice in the beginning, even though it might not sound as great advice, even though it might not sound as insightful. But he was like, never respond to a troll, never respond to a negative comment, ever. Ever. Don't ever do that, because the first thing a troll or a negative comment maker is looking for is attention. As soon as you give them attention, you give them power over you. So never do that. And I try to follow that rule very strictly. Like, I never respond to a negative comment. I never ever respond to um anything that's even remotely trolling, even though sometimes like I'll have a very good snarky and a very edgy response to what they've just said and really hit them back with it. And sometimes I actually do it, and then they never respond after that. After I've made my comeback, they never respond to it. I let myself have those moments, but generally I try to follow this policy. Okay, oh, never respond to a comment that is trolling or that is negative. And the third most fortunate thing I think I have personally as a creator is that I have a very engaged core audience, even though my follower count is not as impressive right now. Like, most creator economy people would classify me as bordering between a nano or a micro, which is not that big. Like, I am a very small particle in this very big universe right now. And but what I have going on for me is a very core, very engaged community, and they fight tooth and nail in the comments. So if you open if you open up any one of my videos, if there are any people who are coming up with, say, views that contradict kind of the mainstream understanding of history, or what my understanding of history is, or what I've presented, without me kind of jumping in to kind of justify what I've said, there's like thousands of people in my following who will take that opportunity and really fight tooth to nail. Like, I have threads which have continued for, I'd say, 100 to 150 kind of messages with people just debating stuff out that I've just said. So yeah, I have that going on for me, and when that happens, it's obviously great for engagement. So I love it when there's a debate going on in the comments, because then the algorithm is like, oh, people are commenting on this, let me show it to more people. It's great for my engagement as well. So trolling might not be that, or negative comments might not be that bad after all.
Yeah, I suppose there's a way to see a silver lining in everything, and I'm glad that you found one that works for you. Also, see, that's something that you're doing for your well-being. You're taking a positive approach to this, so there you go. But thank you so much for sharing all of this and for sharing your story and how you got into this. I'm sure it's just making our listeners more intrigued to see what's coming up with you in the future. So, are there any upcoming projects that your followers and our listeners can expect from you?
Right now I intend on continuing my current series that I've kind of developed over time. So I intend on continuing to explore Lahori heritage sites, and then I'm thinking of maybe expanding to other cities like Pindi or Sialkot or Multan, for example, who have a very, very rich heritage and history. And then, apart from continuing my other this series, in the coming kind of years, I'm also going to kind of look towards creating food and fashion content, but with a very hard focus on history. So telling the history of food or telling the history of fashion, and this, and then also experimenting with other formats, maybe. So maybe long form history vlogs where I kind of go to a site or a couple of sites, or an area, and kind of explore it in a 30 or a 40-minute format and kind of really dig deep into the history of that area or that place, because short form really constricts you into 90 seconds and 60 seconds, and you cannot dive as deep into a topic in short form as long form. So yeah, maybe experimenting with other topics like fashion and food, and then maybe experimenting with other formats like long form, or maybe Reddit is really taking off nowadays. Snapchat is also suddenly very monetizable by creators. So there's a lot of very interesting developments that are happening in the creator economy, and like there's a lot to grab at. There's a lot of opportunities to avail. I just want to be really kind of I just want to really think about which opportunity I want to grab, and then really go for it before I kind of make any decisions or make any commitments to what I'm doing next.
Yeah, and on that note, I think we leave our listeners to think about everything that you've said as well. And I'm sure they want to go and explore your content if they haven't already, or dig a little bit deeper after, the things that you said regarding content strategy. So, Hamza, thank you so much for being here today. It was such a pleasure to chat with you. And I can't wait to see where your content goes next.
Thank you so much for having me as well. This was a very interesting conversation. Some of the questions you posed really made me think about things I haven't thought of before. So thank you so much for having me, and really excited to see what you create next and where you take this podcast.
That is so lovely. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. See you all for the next episode of InSync very soon.